Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today. We are presented by Gatorade on this Monday. It is great to have you with us, Dave Revson and Howard Griffith. Howard, we have 5 weekends left.
So why would you?
In the regular season, because I'm setting up the drama. It's amazing how much has been decided to this point. I mean, I think we've separated 3 teams in this league, but then how much is still up in the air?
Yeah, I think there's so much that's still up in the air when you talk about after you drop down to that second tier. There are going to be a lot of teams that are sitting there fighting it out for a great bowl game experience. So there's still a lot of football to be played and still a lot of crucial games that people have to take advantage of.
And with those 2 lost teams fighting not just for a bowl game, but for a spot potentially in the CFP. And we'll break down all those paths as we continue in the show. But we start, as always, with our big story. And on Monday, it's the weekend that was in the Big Ten, the big board showing it off. 3 games between 5 and 2 teams. Nebraska, Washington, and Iowa emerging as the winners in those contests. Michigan captures Paul Bunyan. Rutgers winning for the first time in conference play. Oregon topping the Badgers, and Indiana ho-hum, just another win by half 100, 56-6 over UCLA. The Hoosiers remain number 2 in the latest AP poll, behind idle Ohio State. The Bucs are back in action this week against Penn State. IU did pick up a handful more number 1 votes. They now have 11. Oregon stays at number 6. And then a couple other teams in the poll from the Big Ten. Michigan is up 4 spots. They are now number 21. USC back in at 23. Washington, Iowa, Illinois, by the way, all receiving votes. So let's start here with the Hoosiers. And Howard, I have to be honest, I'm running out of superlatives. I don't really know what else to say. My vocabulary is limited when it comes to Indiana.
And that's saying something, right?
They are really, really good.
Yeah, I think every time you turn on the tape, every time you have an opportunity to watch them go out and perform, you talk about playing at a very high level. They do it each and every week. They never play down to their opponents. And I think that's a credit to not only the players, but also the message that is being sent by the coaching staff. It really is remarkable the way they've been able to play at such a high level and overcome the adversity when they have it. They're able to make the plays there, too. It's just the confidence that this program has right now is off the charts, because they can make a mistake, they bounce right back. And I think they just take their cues from their head coach, who does a great job of moving on to the next play.
And you and Marcel and I were talking about this on Saturday on the final drive. I think the thing that's really astonishing, well, there are a lot of things that are astonishing. First of all, just they're incredible. Right. But the other thing is they show up every week. I mean, every week they are ready to go. They play with great confidence, as you said, but there aren't a whole lot of mistakes out there. And that, to me, is what separates the great teams from the historic ones. They're clearly a great team, but like, they have a chance. If you're ready to go each and every week, it's amazing what you could do if you're as talented as they are. They played 1 close game. It was against Iowa. I think we're seeing how good Iowa is. We've known for years that it's tough to go into Kinnick and get out of there with a win. But they are just ready to go. I mean, UCLA was red hot. This was a team that had won 3 in a row, that was playing some of the better football in the Big Ten. And this game was essentially over 2 plays in, right? I mean, Aiden Fisher had the pick six. You're like, okay, here we go.
Here we go.
And that was it.
And we also talked about just how the depth of this roster, how deep they are. And you may not know it, and just because it's not laden with 5- and 4-star guys, it's full of guys that understand what their responsibilities and how to play inside this system. And I think that's a big part of it. And one of the things that I think we probably need to take a deeper dive into, just the depth of this roster, because when you talk about making that run into the 12-team playoff, you better have a deep roster to be able to do it. They continue to find players that are continuing to add depth, giving them confidence. Because I say all the time is you just don't want your top players, your starters playing. You want to be able to see the backups get in there and see what they have and make sure that they're able to contribute when it gets into a tough situation. And they've done that. And I'll tell you this, the defense and the defensive line, how disruptive they are at the point of attack it's one of the main reasons that they continue to stay in these games, and they don't nearly get enough credit as they should.
Top 3 in the nation in sacks and tackles for loss. And yes, I do think the star power they have on offense tends to overshadow how good this defense is. Remember, they were top 10 in the nation in both scoring offense and scoring defense last year. They're solidly in the top 10 in both categories again this year. This is a really complete team, and I think that's the biggest thing that stands out to me. It's just there is no discernible weakness here with Indiana. And again, it's an amazing story. I mean, this is their 3rd largest margin of victory in a conference game ever. Each of the top 3 have come in the last 2 years. And by the way, number 4 has come in the last 2 years as well. What's quick thought on UCLA? I mean, it just feels like anytime you play Indiana, it's just kind of bad timing because
exactly.
You know, no matter when it is, no matter when you get them, to our earlier point, they're going to give you a great performance. And maybe just too much to ask of UCLA right now.
I think so. And I think you look at it, you think about just how comfortable that offense was, the way they were able to run the ball in the previous weeks, UCLA, and not to be able to get any of that done in this particular game. They're going to be fine. I think this is still a great story when you talk about, okay, if you've made what you believe to be a decision with your coaching staff and you have to retool the staff, that it's so important to make sure that you have the right people that are in the building at that time to be able to get these young people to do what they need to do, because it's still been remarkable what UCLA has done to this point when you think about how they started the season.
No doubt. Really challenging schedule here down the stretch. We'll see whether they're able to get a couple more wins out of this. But no doubt, I mean, this turnaround has been fantastic for the Bruins. So that was the story with Indiana. They cruised to an easy win. The same cannot be said of Oregon. Let's give a lot of credit to Wisconsin, particularly defense, which played well. Weather conditions weren't great. Dante Moore got hurt, although that was later in the game. And this was already, I mean, this was a close game. Oregon didn't score its first touchdown until late in the first half. What did you take from the Ducks' closer than expected win over the Badgers?
Well, we know they have a way of addressing the issues that show up in a previous week, so I expect them to take care of that problem this particular week. But the problem is, I think, when you talk about not coming out and matching the energy of your opponent, or forget your opponent, just matching your energy, your expectations to go out and play at a high level, that's one of the things. They just seem sluggish in this particular game. And you know that they have a better roster than the Badgers do at this particular time. And you would expect them to really be able to control this game from the beginning when you look at the film and see how the Badgers have been playing up to now. But they weren't able to do that. And I think you have to give some credit to the Badgers as well. I mean, they aren't just going to lay down. They understand. They hear all the noise that's out there, too. And this is, as Coach Gennaro would say, one of their Super Bowls that they have, because they've got a whole bunch of them.
A lot of Super Bowls.
Yeah, they've got a whole bunch of them on here. But they still were playing hard. And for Oregon not to really seem like they could control the game when they needed to is tough. But at the end of the day, they were able to pull away and do what they needed to do to win this football game.
Offense was not nearly as explosive as it had been the week before. Now, it's a high bar. They got 750 yards the week before against Rutgers, but just 359 here. They allowed 4 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. We mentioned Dante Moore left with an injury and was bloodied in the face, and it seems like that probably was the issue there. But look, it gets much more difficult for them here. They still have a game against a really good Washington team, but after the bye, they go to Iowa City to take on the Hawkeyes, and we were just talking about how well Iowa played at home against Indiana. Oregon will need to play better than they did against Wisconsin in order to win that game. Quick thought on the Badgers, and as you said, give them credit. It has been a really rough year. Honestly, it's been a rough 2 years in Madison, certainly the latter half of last year and then bleeding over into this season. And yet the effort was there. Honestly, they just don't have any firepower on offense. Some of that is injury related.
A lot of it,
it's just really hard to score.
It's been a tough couple of years for them, but you know they're still fighting. And as people will say all the time, in situations like this when things aren't going well for your team, guys still have to put good things on film, particularly now, Rever, in the day of NIL and the transfer portal. Because say if you do want to go, there's no hiding. People are you're being evaluated on film each and every week, and they're evaluating you as well. You're talking about the team that you're on. So it's really in your best interest to make sure that you are staying dialed in, because it's real easy to find the guys that are going to be pointing the fingers and ready to get out of there and do something different. But now, this is when you find out just what your team is really all is made up to be and who you're going to move forward with, because it's still a lot of football to be played and a lot of evaluation that needs to be done.
Much needed bye week for them, and then as we've talked about in the schedule, it's just preposterous. They get Washington at home, then they go to Indiana. I mean, it's just every single week for them this year has been a tough game. How about Washington? This was one of those games that we talked about. There were four of them or three of them, I guess, heading into last week, where you had the 5-2 teams going head-to-head. Washington, Illinois was one of them. We saw Washington emerge with the win over the Illini. They did it with a high-powered offense, and I thought a really good defensive performance as well. What did you take from Washington's performance?
I'm still baffled that Washington isn't ranked. Receiving votes is not.
Same with Iowa. We'll get to that later.
But that's part of that is, we're insider. We're seeing these teams on a weekly basis, and when you go nationally, sometimes people aren't paying as much attention. But when you look at the names that they have on this offense and you see who they're being led by on the defensive side of football, you would say it should give you a sense to look up and say, wait a minute, let's see how they're getting this done when you talk about the elite players that they have. But when you think about Washington, they had been in a situation where they had been bottled up a little bit offensively. The defenses have done a good job, particularly Michigan and Ohio State have done an outstanding job of really kind of cutting down the big plays.
Right.
They weren't able, Illinois was not able to do that this week. Demond Williams was able to get outside of the pocket. He was able to stand tall in the pocket and not feel rushed or hurried. And he was able to make a lot of plays. And they got the ball to Jonah Coleman, probably not as much as you would love to see him run the ball. Only 14 carries, I believe, but had some catches out of the backfield. But that's, when you start utilizing Coleman, and then all of a sudden you remember that Boston's out there, this is a team that is loaded. And talking about making explosive plays, and they're getting their young players to make big plays as well for them. This is a team, I've been excited about this team since week one when I really had a chance to kind of study them and see what they're loaded. And, this was a tough situation for Illinois to go in because, they don't have their best 11 on the defensive side of football right now with some injuries. And then guys aren't getting to the quarterback. And if you're not taking the ball away and creating turnovers, it hurts you against a team like this.
This was a game where you felt like the winner has a great shot now at being in that college football playoff discussion. I know that was the goal in Champaign at the beginning of the year. They still have a chance to have a great year, could very easily finish at 9-3. This was the most challenging game ahead for them. The issue, to your point, is just the defense isn't quite good enough.
Yeah, they haven't been able to produce the pressure on teams that they needed to, on the right teams that they needed to. And when you look at Washington, this is a team where you really had to be disciplined as rushers. You had to be disciplined as linebackers and corners and safeties. As a defense, you needed to make sure you could keep everything in front of you. And sometimes you just saw them breaking, Washington breaking, contain. And those are just things, when you have a dynamic quarterback, you can't allow him to get outside. Because once he gets out there, you can forget it because he's extending plays and he's going to make things happen.
Demond Williams is certainly a dynamic quarterback. He is really something. He is fun to watch. This is a guy we're going to be talking about for the Heisman in the future. I realize probably too far down this year to make a push to the Heisman, but he's a guy who I think is going to be at the very top of the list as we head into next season. So much more to come here on the show. We'll get into the trophy battles next. The Wolverines turning it on in the second half in Iowa with a complete domination of the Gophers. This is Big Ten Today. The Paul Bunyan Trophy will stay in Ann Arbor. The Wolverines topping Michigan State 31-20 for their fourth straight win over their rivals. First time they pulled that off in 18 years. Wolverines ran for 276 yards in the win, their most against Michigan State since 1994. They're 6-2 on the season with a favorable schedule ahead before the showdown with Ohio State. And obviously, if you beat the #1 team in the country, That's going to go a long way towards getting you in the playoff. We'll see if Ohio State's still number one when they meet on Thanksgiving weekend. It is great to see 1 versus 2 in the Big Ten. Again, that's the 4th different 1 and 2 combination with the Big Ten this year. And then you see the Wolverines earning their way back into that poll this week. It's a familiar formula here, Howard. They did it with great defense and the ground game.
Yeah, I think when they're at their best, they're controlling the line of scrimmage on both sides. But particularly when you talk about their offense and who they want to be and who they've been in the past when they've won championships, they've run the ball and they've really just imposed their will upon their opponent. And it may take a little while, which it did against Michigan State. Michigan State hung in there, but then they just continued to take over, and the ground game did that. And to me, that is one of the best recipes to allow your young quarterback who's really talented, is going to make a lot of plays. And, Marsh has really stepped up and made tremendous catches and runs after the catch for them this year. That when they can do it this way, I mean, this is tough, a tough team to beat. And then defensively, Wink Martindale and that group on that side of the ball do a great job of getting after the quarterback and really taking the game away from him and doing what you want to do. And that's a good thing when you're able to take the football away.
They had 4 sacks, 6 tackles for loss in this game as they continue their dominance of the Spartans. Again, 4 in a row against Michigan State. And look, when you look at it from Michigan State's point of view, Howard, it was a tough call that went against them on an offsides that would have been a turnover that would have maybe flipped this game. But I think truthfully, and again, you never know, right? I mean, because momentum shifts, but they got dominated on the line of scrimmage in this game. There was just no question who the superior team was. Mm-hmm. We've talked about this through the years. If you win the rushing battle, you win this game. It's 49-55 now in this series. The team that's run for more yards has won it, and Michigan State just hasn't been good enough on the offensive line.
Yeah, haven't been good enough, and they were expecting to be much better than they have been this year, but they haven't been able to rise to that occasion. I want to go back to the offsides play just for a moment, and really the only reason is we talk about plays, and I talk about 5 affordable plays in every game that can change an outcome, and that was one of those plays. I mean, just watching it on television, I can only imagine what it felt like to be in that situation where all of a sudden you get a big play and it doesn't happen and you get deflated because of it. You talk about an emotional high you go on it as a player, and it seemed like had that play held up for them, maybe, as you mentioned, we don't know.
You just don't know.
You don't know,
right.
But it felt like Michigan State had a better chance. But those are the types of plays that when you're trying to get to that next level, you're trying to gain that consistency, you've got to be able to make those plays. It's a game of inches, and we saw that on that particular play.
And Michigan State, just too many self-inflicted wounds. And again, that's a questionable penalty, but
yes.
They had 12 penalties in this game for well over 100 yards. You just have to be more disciplined than the Spartans were in this one. I know emotions run high. I think we've seen that in this rivalry.
Which is all the more reason why you have to be disciplined. Yeah. There are enough things that have happened in this rivalry in the past that when you come into this game, it is emphasized that you have to be disciplined, not only on the field, but also off the field as well. And Michigan State hasn't found that discipline to be able to get that done.
Well said. Spartans still winless in conference. They head to Minnesota this week. Speaking of Minnesota, I would say the most impressive performance of the day, non-Indiana edition, right? You have to have your own category. Right. You have Indiana, and then you have everyone else. Iowa's domination of Minnesota was so thorough against what is a pretty good Minnesota team. I mean, they just overwhelmed Nebraska a week ago. This was as thorough a beatdown as you were going to see, and we saw Iowa offense, defense, special teams. They scored all 3 in the first half. It was a remarkable performance.
What is it, 18 years? They've had a pick 6?
Yeah, 18 straight years.
18 straight years?
Yeah. Incredible. Second longest streak in the country.
It really is. And you think about, right, we knew what Kirk Ferentz milestone earlier this year. It seems like since that game, they've just taken off.
Yeah, gotten better.
They've gotten so much better, and that's not to say that the players are feeling the pressure and want to get all of this done. But it just looks like they're settling in to who they are. Their quarterback understands that he can really help this team with his legs, and he gets it done. It doesn't look pretty, but he extends those plays and gets some tough yardage in the rushing game and adds to that. And then when you talk about special teams and getting points on that side and defensively, you're exactly right. You are overwhelmed because you know they're going to be solid on the defensive side of the football.
Weegan is as fun a player to watch as we have in this league. So now 5 return touchdowns in his career equals Tim Dwight.
Yeah, I know that took us back on Saturday when you mentioned that, because we all know how good Tim Dwight is.
He was incredible.
Special player. So
Weegan's phenomenal. Yeah. And I think to your point, like with Gronowski, look, it is not, I know he threw for 10,000 yards at South Dakota State. He's not going to light it up with the pass game. I think that's become readily apparent. But he did throw one nice touchdown pass in this game. But the fact of the matter is they figured out how to play with what he does do well. And he can really do damage with his legs. And when you have an offensive line that's as good as theirs, and we have running backs as good as theirs, and a defense that's that good, you don't need him to necessarily light it up with his arm. It just needs to be a threat. And I think he's shown he can throw it well enough that it's a threat.
So one of the things that we've witnessed since we've been covering Iowa is that they really do a good job of utilizing what they have, maximizing the skill set of the players. And it's never pretty, and everyone always wants more. But they really do a good job of doing just that and finding out what it is that their players do well and getting it done. And this is another team. We talked about a team that continues to make mistakes to hurt themselves. This is a disciplined football team that you're not going to see them make a lot of penalties, not a lot of self-inflicted wounds. They're going to go out and play, for the most part, a very clean game, and it shows up. And now you look up and you're like, well, what happened? I mean, they're to Minnesota, which, again...
Yeah, what did you make of Minnesota? I was surprised at how poorly they played.
P.J. Fleck was surprised, too.
Yeah,
I think everyone was, because it happened so quick. And we know that this is a good football team, and it's like, well, wait a minute, how does this? And you know that tidal wave comes at you of not only just scoring points, but also just the emotion of the games, and we add the rivalry part of this to this, and it takes on a life of its own.
No one's happier to be home than them this week because they're 5-0 at home. On the road, they haven't won a game. They've been outscored 101-20. They get Michigan State in Minneapolis this week. We do have some really sad news to pass along from the weekend. Former Ohio State All-American center Nick Mangold passed away due to complications from kidney disease. Mangold played on the 2002 National Championship team in Columbus his freshman year. He started the next 3 seasons at center for the Bucks, was an All-American, a first-round pick of the Jets, for whom he played his entire pro career, making 7 Pro Bowls. Mangold had gone public with his condition, appealing for potential transplant donors less than 2 weeks before his passing. His former coach, Jim Tressel, called Mangold loyal, hardworking, selfless, caring, and loving, adding, "We lost a great one." Nick Mangold was 41 years old. Nebraska bowl eligible for the 2nd straight year after a 7-year drought. The Huskers topped Northwestern 28-21 in Lincoln, improving to 3-1 this season in one-score games, which had been the Achilles heel of the program for the last decade. Huskers ending the Cats' 4-game win streak. Northwestern still needs one more win to guarantee a postseason spot. Howard, I would say neither team played great in this one, but the mark of a good team is to win a game when you don't play at your best, and Nebraska did that.
And this is the type of game we've talked about in recent weeks or in even years, that they would lose these types of games. But Johnson, I think, continues to do a tremendous job. I think he's the real MVP when you think about this offense that makes them go, because he's one of the most consistent players in that program. Does a great job of running the ball. He's always falling forward, scoring touchdown. You see him always carrying it high and tight. You don't have to worry about him fumbling, and just his ability to keep his legs moving. He's one of the fun guys to watch in this conference.
And give the offensive line some credit. They had allowed 9 sacks. You remember the week before against Minnesota, gave up just 1 sack against the Wildcats here, and didn't need a big game from Dylan Raiola. He had a season low for passing yards. He had one really big interception, but then Northwestern turned it right back over, and Nebraska marched right down the field, converted some critical third downs in this game, so he stepped up when they needed him to. Frankly, the quarterback on the other side did not. Preston Stone continues to struggle with bad decisions and interceptions, which have cost them in their losses.
Let me finish up with Nebraska on this point particularly. You made the point about the offensive line and how much better they played. They play better when they're able to run the football, when it's not a situation where they have to pass protect the entire time. That's when they get themselves into trouble. But you look at the Northwestern side of it, and this has been really since week one, we've talked about this. When they turn the football over, bad things happen for this program because they're just not at a point where they're just able to overcome those type of self-inflicted wounds. They've got to play a clean game to be able to do it. And a lot of times this defense, to me, this is a good enough defense that if you don't turn the football over and you make the plays that are out there, you can win a lot more games. And that's been the situation this year.
Yes, and in fairness, not all on the quarterback, right?
Yeah.
They gave up a bunch of third down conversions on that last Nebraska drive, and a lot of them were third and significance. They weren't third and one.
Lot.
They were third and long.
Yeah.
So Northwestern heads into a bye week. Their schedule's brutal here going forward. We'll see whether they can figure out a way to get another win and ensure themselves a spot in a bowl game. One other game to cover, Rutgers and Purdue, back and forth affair.
Yeah.
The Scarlet Knights able to pull it out. Purdue had a turnover in a tie game in its own territory. They had struggled so mightily with turnovers. They had played a clean game up until this point, and then Ryan Brown catches a deflected pass instead of maybe just knocking it down, tries to advance it, fumbles it. Rutgers recovers. Jay Patel kicks the game winner. A huge win for the Scarlet Knights.
A huge win, and you saw the emotion on Coach at the end of the game, but it also shows the pressure that these young people are under, because it felt like I can make a play. I know I need to knock it down. I've been coached to knock it down before, and I don't get that done because I'm trying to make a play. And then Rutgers just was able to really run the football and had an opportunity with special teams to come up with a win there. Defensively, we talked about them defensively not being able to come up with plays, really giving up a lot of yardage, and they needed a crucial defensive play at that particular point, and they came up with a big one and got themselves a chance to get a win.
Yeah, it's a huge, huge win for Rutgers. They head to Illinois this week. Purdue continues its streak. They haven't won a conference game now 14 in a row, which is their longest ever skid. You want to talk about difficult schedules. Theirs is really hard going forward. And the next two games are Michigan and Ohio State. How do you hold this together? And Barry Odom, there was so much good feeling around this program. Won his first two games. He was the first Purdue coach to start his career with 2 wins in more than 100 years. And now all of a sudden it feels like they just can't figure it out.
I don't have any concerns about them being able to hold it together because I think he's and his staff is really good enough to press the right buttons. I think the key is to continue to show the good things that you've been able to do out there, but also showing the mistakes. There are clear mistakes that they make in these games that they're not able to win. And here's what ends up being tough. They play so tough down the stretch, and they found that they were just that close, but you need just a little bit more to get over. So you can show those plays that if we just execute here and here, things are a little bit different. So I think there's still a lot that they can learn from, and I still think that this is a team that's really close. And I don't say that just because we're here at the Big Ten Network. I say it because I've watched him coach, I've watched these games, and I see that they are right on the doorstep. They just have to knock it in.
No, I said here 2 weeks ago, I said they're going to win one of these next 2 games against Northwestern or Rutgers. I was wrong, but I said that because I thought they were getting better. And let's look at this. And one thing I'll say, and then we'll move on. They had 17 penalties and 7 turnovers the previous 2 games. They had 0 penalties and just the 1 turnover that ended up costing them the game in this one. So again, are you emphasizing turning things around? Are you emphasizing, hey, we can't do this? Yes, they were able to reverse those trends. It just was not enough to get them the win. Up next, a handful of 2-loss Big Ten teams trying to join the top 3 in the college football playoff picture. We assess the stretch run for each and every one of them as we continue on Big Ten Today. We take a look at the Big Ten standings. Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, all in great shape to return to the college football playoff for a second straight year. Remember, those were all playoff teams a year ago. After that is where it gets interesting. Who could be the 4th team from the Big Ten to get in? And if you can get to the end of the year with 2 losses, you figure to be in good shape. Iowa, USC, Michigan, Nebraska, Washington, all of those would need to run the table to get themselves into a 2-loss scenario at the end of the season. And again, it feels like that's the magic number.
Yep.
We're not operating in a vacuum. And so you just have no idea what's going to happen in some of these other conferences and how it's all going to play out. But a 10-2 Big Ten team certainly is going to get great consideration. I think we're going to show as we look at these schedules that it would be kind of crazy if one of them ended up getting left out based on what 10-2 would mean, what you would have had to have done to get to 10-2. So we're going to take it team by team with these 5 teams. So let's start with USC. They have a win over Michigan, which is huge. They lost to Illinois and Notre Dame, both of those on the road. It's a challenging schedule going forward. You look at some of these games coming up, starting with the game at Nebraska, who's another one of the teams in this discussion. You still have the home game against Iowa. You go to Oregon. Obviously, Northwestern and UCLA aren't pushovers either. But, I mean, if you win these games, you think about kind of feathers in your cap. I mean, most notably, Iowa and Oregon. Those would be huge wins. Nebraska as well.
Yeah, I think you should start off with the Nebraska being able to go on the road and be able to come up with a win. This will be a huge opportunity for them. But there's so much that is sitting in front of them when you look at this UCLA schedule. I mean, USC schedule. They have all the opportunity is sitting right there. Obviously, a huge matchup against Oregon on the road that'll be interesting as well. But this is a team that if they go out and take care of their business and they can play at the level that we've seen them play occasionally and be able to be consistent, they know you can score points. They can defensively, we know what they can do defensively, but they've had some lulls sometimes. Yeah, this team, there would be no doubt that this resume would put them into the 12-team playoff.
I worry about teams running the ball right at them in the way that Notre Dame did. There are a few teams on that schedule that I think are constructed to do it. Oregon would be an obvious example. Again, their best win is Michigan. Let's look at the Wolverines schedule here going forward. I love the way this lays out. The game against Northwestern at Wrigley Field, maybe the most challenging of the next 3. They do go to Maryland as well, but a great shot to be 9-2 heading into the game against Ohio State at home. As you may recall, this has been a little bit of a storyline in the Big Ten. They have won 4 in a row against the Buckeyes. I think this is very favorable. I think they have a great shot of that game Thanksgiving weekend being a determining game for whether or not they make the playoffs.
Yeah, and let's think about the way they're playing the game right now. They want to run the ball. They want to control the line of scrimmage. And this is a situation where they should be able to get that done when you look at the schedule that's out there. So having an opportunity to go into Thanksgiving and playing against what should be a #1 Ohio State team, man, that was who would have a better win this year. So that would be a great one for them to do. And again, I think it's attainable to get to that point.
Yes.
And then the chips can fall where they may, though just based on what Michigan is doing at this particular point and how they're playing, particularly on defense, gives them a chance to go on the road or wherever they need to go to take care of business.
And already have good wins. They beat Nebraska. They beat Washington. But to your point, assuming Ohio State gets to that point, undefeated and #1 in the country, to win a game of that magnitude when the whole country is watching, 10-2, be really tough. And again, you look at the losses. I mean, Oklahoma and USC, those are both really good teams. So there's nothing on that resume that raises any kind of a red flag. The Washington win, as we said, a really good one for the Wolverines. Like Michigan, the schedule's very cooperative the next few weeks here, and then culminates with a rivalry game that could put them over the top. You got Wisconsin and Purdue the next 2. Neither's won a conference game. UCLA, again, it's not going to be easy. And then they finish up at home with the Ducks. Man, I like the way this sets up. We talked about them at the beginning of the year as a dark horse that they kind of needed to get to this point at 6-2. Again, I think the belief was that that game at Wisconsin would be more challenging on paper than it is right now, but Washington's got a lot to feel good about.
Right, and we look at the way Washington is playing, and really we go back to this past weekend, and this will be a game that's coming up when you talk about going against the Badgers, where it becomes, when you look at their schedule, how mature and confident can this team be? Do they understand what's at stake, and they're able to embody that and they don't play down to the competition, as we've talked about Indiana playing at a high level. That's what the next step of this team. It's the mental aspect of being able to go on the road, being able to play against a team that you're probably going to be favored at, and be able to take care of your business and not find yourself in a struggle. Because again, when you look toward the end of the season, the rivalry game that they'll have versus Oregon, you got to take care of the business first, and then you're going to get there. So we'll find out a lot about the maturity of this team as we move forward.
Illinois is the first true quality win I'd say they've had. If you're going to nitpick, I think you would look at it that way. But again, the Oregon game gives them an opportunity to leave no doubt and to send a message. Again, we're assuming you have to get to 10-2.
Yes.
But they'd be 10-2, and with a couple of quality wins, including one against a team that I think almost certainly is going to find its way into the playoff. Man, I think Iowa's really interesting, and you had mentioned it when we saw the poll, how surprising it was that they're not ranked. They've lost 2 games to Iowa State and Indiana by a total of 8 points, far and away the best game Indiana's gotten this year. Remember, Indiana leads the nation in scoring margin by a significant margin, and Iowa easily could have beaten them. If they run the table, there is no way in the world you can keep them out. I mean, look at the schedule. Really challenging games. Oregon at home, at SC, at Nebraska on Black Friday. Again, this will not be easy. But, man, if you win these games, Howard, you're a playoff team. There's just no doubt in my mind.
As a friend of the program, Paul Chris would say to us many times, there are plenty of opportunities.
These are all opportunities.
These are all opportunities. And the way they play the game and the way they're constructed right now, there's no reason that they shouldn't have an opportunity to go out and win these types of games. When you think about the way they're able to keep the chains moving offensively. Listen, anytime you have Oregon coming into your place, it's going to create a problem for you. But we know that this Iowa team doesn't give up big plays. And they're not going to give up those explosive plays. So we'll see if they can force Oregon into making mistakes, just trying to go for the big play all the time and not taking the underneath stuff. So, again, I think that's going to be a great matchup for them as well. But, again, their chance is there. And who's going to bet against Iowa in the way they play the game right now? They're scoring the points that they need to offensively and defensively and special teams. Every
game will be close. I mean, they're giving up 13 points a game, so no one is going to blow them out.
Right.
To your point, they're so sound in the special teams. They can score points there. And that's such a difference maker when you play these games on the margins. Again, whether it's Weegan, whether it's Stevens kicking field goals, whether it's blocking kicks. There are just so many things that Iowa does well on those margins. I do think it's fair to question, are they dynamic enough on offense? This is the constant question we've had. But if there's any recent version of Iowa that's good enough offensively, it feels like it's this one.
This is it. I mean, you might want the defenses from maybe some previous years, but I'd rather take this team right now because they're finding ways to put up points and they're scoring in many different avenues. So you wonder if they can keep them under. You mentioned the points, 13 points. They'll have to keep it low because as you talk about trying to be dynamic is not who they want to be. That's not the blueprint for them to be successful. For them, it's to make their opponent, drive a long field and try to come up with some turnovers that way. It'll be interesting to see if Oregon can stay disciplined enough, as I mentioned earlier, after going after those big plays and trying to get them, to be disciplined enough just to take what the defense gives you and kind of dink and dunk your way down the field.
I'm fascinated to see what the committee does with this team. It's, again, astonishing to me they're not in the top 25. When you consider of the 2 lost teams in the country, only Notre Dame has lost its 2 games by fewer points. You look at the quality of the teams that Iowa has lost to and how close
this is right where they want to be.
No,
Iowa's right where they want to be.
I know, and the AP poll, the AP poll doesn't matter, but it does set a narrative.
Yeah.
And again, you would hope that the committee would understand enough to not follow that narrative that the AP poll has set. Could come down to a 1-game season finale against the Huskers, where Iowa to run the table up and to that point. In theory, that could be a play-in game for the playoff. We look at Nebraska. Remember, they beat Cincinnati, which has turned out to be a great win. It's the only loss for the Bearcats. They're tied for first in the Big 12. This game Saturday against SC is just enormous. Matt Rule was talking about it in the postgame against Northwestern how excited he is about it. If you win that game, UCLA and Penn State on the road, both eminently winnable, and then that game against the Hawkeyes. What do you think of the Huskers' chance? I mean, they've been up and down. I think this is the challenge. If the team that played against Minnesota shows up, we're probably not going to be talking about them going into that Iowa weekend. So you've got to play a little better version of yourself.
You do, and you have to be able to. We talk about putting the game plan together that's going to give you an opportunity to be successful. Man, getting after the quarterback is where they've been able to have that type of success, but can you see it consistently? And this is, to me, this is why it's so fascinating having an 18-team conference and a 12-team play. All of these games matter.
Yes. They
matter, so you have to be able to be playing at your very best when you get to this point in the season. And we're going to find out, has Nebraska gotten rid of some of those, okay, here we go again, this is a close game, we're going to lose it. It looks like they have, but now we want to see that body of work continue to grow, and that will tell us if they've broken through and now that they're back.
Just being truthful, I think this is, of that group, for me, the team I wonder about the most.
Yeah.
And, they had narrow escape against Maryland, narrow escape against Northwestern. I'm not sure they're quite there, but again, they can erase that doubt.
Absolutely.
With this game against SC. And then if you beat Iowa, I mean, you'll be 10-2 and you'll have that win. Like, you look at who's got the best non-conference win in the Big Ten? It may be Nebraska.
Could be them, right?
That's a heck of a win.
Yeah, so we're going to find out.
Right.
And this is, I think, this is why it's so important. And I know a lot of times we talk about players, they play the game, they win the game. But to me, when we're getting to this point in the season, coaching matters. Coaching really matters. Game plans matter. Being able to press the right buttons matter. Being able to motivate these young people to make sure that they can put themselves in a position to win matters.
They're pushing the right buttons on defense for sure. They've yet to give up more than 400 yards. In a game.
Protecting the quarterback is a big one for them, too.
That is a problem. Again, where you talk about, hey, why do I wonder about this team or of all these teams, what's the one that has the most question marks? To me, that's the biggest one. I mean, their offensive line, I think, is maybe the biggest weakness in any particular unit of any of these teams. But we'll see. We're going to wrap up the show next, taking you around the Big Ten, including yet another Big Ten title for one of Evanston's many women's sports powerhouses. That is next on Big Ten Today. It is time to go around the Big Ten. For the third straight season, the Northwestern Wildcats, the Big Ten regular season field hockey champs. The second-ranked Cats clinched the title Friday with a 3-1 win over Michigan. They pounded Ohio State 7-0 yesterday as well. 9th regular season conference championship for NU. The 15-1 Cats wrap up the regular season this Friday at Michigan State before heading to the Big Ten tournament next week in Bloomington. Speaking of Big Ten tournaments, the women's soccer tournament bracket is set. Washington, the top seed after clinching its first ever Big Ten title last Sunday. The 10-team single elimination tournament starts Thursday at Purdue with opening round matches. The semifinals and championship will take place at Energizer Park in St. Louis, November 6th and 9th. All opening round and quarterfinal matches can be seen on Big Ten Plus. The semifinals and championship match will be broadcast on the Big Ten Network. Our big stat presented by Gatorade. The Big Ten currently with 6 schools that are ranked first in the nation overall in their respective sports. We all know about Ohio State in football, Nebraska 20-0, number 1 in volleyball. Purdue men's basketball topping the preseason men's poll. Michigan State remains tops in the U.S. CHO men's hockey poll. Wisconsin women's hockey 9-0 and number 1. And in men's water polo 15-2, USC tops the latest rankings. A look at the Big Ten's top Heisman contenders as we enter November. Fernando Mendoza of Indiana topping a lot of the straw polls right now, and with good reason. Leads the nation in touchdown passes. He's second in pass efficiency. Julian Sand of Ohio State actually leads the nation in that pass efficiency category. He's completing a mind-boggling 80% of his passes as well. Dante Moore, realistically a bit more of a long shot, but certainly in the conversation for the Ducks. Howard, I would say Mendoza and Sand both enter the final month of the regular season as legitimate contenders. And again, Mendoza may be the leader at this point.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that he's not going to find himself in New York, particularly having a big game coming up in the championship game. He'll have that. But he's just played so well, and I think that what he's been able to accomplish this year has just been great. When you look at Julian, I think he still has games that are out there. He has an opportunity with that Michigan game to put up some big numbers there. So I think he has some opportunities that are out there. And I'd say this, and I know we talked about DeMond Williams maybe next year, but if they're 10-2,
yes, right. People will get to watch him, and they'll understand how great he is. I just think it's hard to come from where he is.
Yeah,
that's
no
a
doubt.
flaw in the system, more so than a comment on DeMond Williams.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think you get an argument from me about any of the names that we have right now. But Fernando is doing a tremendous job in what he's done to this point.
Couple observations as a voter. I know that Fernando Mendoza's acceptance speech would be off the charts.
True.
It would be so good.
True.
Right? But I also think, like, if you look ahead, Howard, think about this. The ballots aren't due until after championship weekend. Mm-hmm. I think we're on a collision course with Indiana and Ohio State in Indy. That could be a game not just for the #1 seed in the college football playoff, but also for the Heisman Trophy.
Should be. What? This Big Ten championship game, it's all about it.
Oh, man. I mean, that would be.
But let's not get there.
That whole thing, I know.
Let's not get
I
there.
know. That whole thing would be off the hook. We'll see you tomorrow with Jake and Yogi.